Yeah, so good evening and welcome to Sit Chat, the weekly event on various topics of interest to startups. So, my name is Dinakar. I'm a consultant, coach, mentor, trainer for improving the performance of companies. With that, and earlier to doing this, I was working with Bosch, various roles for 26 years, and I've been working, helping companies improve their performance, individuals improve their performance, startups succeed for the last 10 years. With that brief introduction, I have volunteered to do the Sit Chat every Thursday as a contribution to the community in terms of trying to see in what way we can bring some experts to discuss and share their wisdom on some topics of interest to a startup, like what you see on this slide. And based on this, we have one expert, and today it is Aman Zaidi, who's a leadership expert. And with that background, we organize this session for about 1 hour. Initially, 20 to 25 minutes of some kind of a didactic information sharing or wisdom sharing from the expert, and after that we have a short Q&A where everybody can participate. The Before I really get into the topic, let me just share that look, we whatever we're doing with a noble intent, and our speakers, our participants are definitely professionals who have had experience in their lives, but still, please contact your uh, trusted professionals before you really implement any wisdom which you gain from this or an insight which you gain from this chat. Then let's directly go into the topic for the day, which is to talk about tips for inspiring leadership, which can be useful for the startups. And that is being shared by Aman Zaidi. I have known him only through SIT, but I know that he is a very, very strong leadership professional, L&D professional in leadership space, has been working with various companies, individuals, and I went through his profile, has had a very diverse exposure to multiple industries. So I'm sure you come with a tremendous amount of wisdom and experience, Aman. I hand over to you, and then please take over. You can either use a slide or you can just talk. It's all you're there. We'll listen to you for about 20-25 minutes. Over to you, Aman. And you
Sure.
can also please introduce yourself a little more in detail so all of us get to know you better.
Sure thing. Sure thing. Thanks so much, Dinakar. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. And I'm very happy that this opportunity to at least not face to face, but at least through Zoom, get to meet fellow SIT members. So, it's very good to see all of you. Uh, a little bit of introduction about who I am, and especially, my relationship with leadership. So I live in Pune. I have been here for about 17 years. I was in Bombay for 13 years before that. So I've been in Maharashtra now, what, actually 31 years. And before that, I was in Rajasthan. Before that, I was in Haryana. Before that, I was in UP. Before that, I was in Delhi. Before that, I was in my mom's, womb. So, I've actually lived in about 5 different states. Uh, and my career actually has been a little bit like that also. I was not one of those people who knew in class 11 what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I was one of those people who finished their graduation and then said, "Acha, ab kya karna hai aage?" So I started out in, I did an MBA in marketing. I did marketing and sales for the, first few years of my career. And then I went into the BPO business. In the year 2000, 2001, BPOs were still startups. Actually, I actually joined a few BPOs which were in, the startup phase. And thankfully, all of them had some kind of funding. So they were able to ramp up. I joined BPOs when they were in the ramp up growth phase of their startup journey. And because of that, I got some idea of what a startup feels like. Uh, it was great because as the industry grew, I grew with it. And around that time, I actually got the opportunity to start leading teams of people. So from the year 2001 onwards till the year 2010, so for about 9 years, I played a variety of different leadership roles, from being a team leader, assistant manager, manager, head of operations, from leading a team of 12 people to leading a project which had 600 people, an entire business section. And after that, for the last 14 years, I have been using my practical leadership experience in order to teach leadership to other people. So I've been a leadership development facilitator and coach for the last 14 years. And like Dinakar pointed out, I've had the opportunity to work with organizations in many different industries, but also I've had the privilege of working with a few startup founders and coaching them in various areas. So that's a little bit of a background about who I am and what I do. Is there any particular question that you have? Is there anything else that you might want to know about me? If you ask me, I'll be able to answer that question.
Aman, maybe one question from my side would be, what made you get into becoming a leadership coach or a leadership? What is the drive? What are the?
Actually, that's a great question, Dinakar. Partly it was a journey of self-discovery. I think partly it was also a lack of great leadership from the people that I was working with. When I actually became head of operations, around that time, I started to notice that I was actually enjoying the role, much less than I used to enjoy my previous roles. I found that I was happier being an assistant manager in operations or a manager in operations, and I was less happy playing a bigger role, which was strange because the role was bigger, the scope was bigger, the money was bigger, but I was still not happy. So I had to sit down and start thinking about why was I not happy. And here's what I discovered. I discovered that uh, I was more passionate about growing people, about helping people perform, helping people grow, than I was about things such as bottom line, top line, metrics, etc. And when that realization happened, I decided that, okay, if this is what I'm more passionate about, I should make a career in this line. I did not want to spend 30 years working with metrics when my passion was people. So that was part of the reason why I switched. Of course, I was also working for organizations which were kind of very metric oriented, and they did not allow for people like me to blossom. I was actually I was finding that I was being criticized for being a people-led leader, uh, and I was being forced to become a more, let's say, cutthroat leader. And that was not something I was willing to compromise on. So, I think that culture also made me decide that I don't want to work in this kind of a culture.
Yeah, some thoughts come to me. We can discuss after you share your insights
Absolutely.
on
Absolutely.
leadership. Sure. Yeah, please go on.
Absolutely. Sure. Right. So, leadership is an extremely wide topic, right? You can understand that it has tremendous scope. May I request, there's about seven of you here. Can you use the chat box and just put in some comments, or you can also unmute yourself if you want, and tell me which aspect of leadership are you interested in talking about today, or which is a current leadership issue that you are you're dealing with and you'd like to hear more about it.
From the department level, different types of control, encryption, HCO.
Sure, go for it.
Stay like a control the work, even in the quarter.
Sorry, Sagar, you're on mute.
The leadership where I look at is actually popping out from a recent article from Dinakar, where he mentioned about manufacturing sector and the scenario. Now, the leadership question for me is, look at a mid-level, a medium scale or large organized companies, the leadership is not a problem. But in the micro and small manufacturing industries, the leadership or the kind of leadership what is required, I'm clueless about it. Because this is a sector which is kind of organized but unorganized, and the kind of workforce there are blue collared kind of like there is a huge challenge. What is the kind of leadership that actually works there?
Okay, so what
Yeah.
kind of leadership that will work in SME manufacturing firms, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, and there's one more from Millen, which says sales and marketing leadership. Who would want to own sales and not working for money? That means my question also was more or less in the same direction. See, as a leader, I think the best situation or best leader would be that who is able to uh, inspire people to own whatever that they're doing and become proactive. You know, in a sense, that kind of a action initiative and also sustainability to make sure that they are proactive. You know, that
Sure.
how do you imbibe that proactivity in people? If suppose everybody is proactive and they're able to complete their tasks and then own whatever that they have committed, then you have created an ideal organization. So how do you do that was the question.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Anything else from, Ajit, Hemant, Jairam, Namrata, anything that you'd like to add? Which aspect of leadership are you interested in today?
Aman, in case you have not met Ajit, Ajit is another, what should I say, a competitor to you. He has been inspiring people, creating great leaders for almost now 30 odd years, 30, 35 years. And he is a very popular trainer in our group. Ajit, maybe you can introduce yourself and talk about what do you want Aman to talk about.
Yeah, Dinakar, I don't know whether I should talk, but anyway, since he's telling, see, Aman, for me, 4 pillars in any individual. Number one is ecology. Okay, so your culture is people, so you do not like metrics. That is your ecology. Number two is your exposure. Number three is your experience. Number four is your emergence. What have you done to emerge yourself? So I work on these 4 things.
Yeah.
Okay. You see whether you can connect it in your own way.
Sure. Surely. Thanks. Hi, Namrata. Did you have a point to make?
Yeah, like different, when we listen to different people have different opinion on leadership. For example, Narayan Murthy sir says lead by example, and some of the recent YouTube ads which come up with the life coaches, they say don't do all the work by yourself. You start delegating tasks to your team, and you cannot wear all the hats
Yeah, you're
like that.
talking about
So
Rajiv Talre. You're talking about Rajiv Talreja.
I don't know. There are many ads coming up, many coaches coming up like that.
I know him in Namrata. I know that guy in person.
Then get a paid YouTube one.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, Namrata, sorry, your question is that there are different kind of messages around leadership, and therefore,
So what exactly we need? We are confused at what we should actually take
sure.
take up.
All right. Great. Thanks so much, Namrata. Sorry, Hemant, did you also have a point?
No, I'm good. It
All
was
right.
just
Okay. Thanks. So, here, you're right. I want to pick up what Namrata said, and I want to start building on that. So you're right, leadership actually is it's a term that is used very freely, very loosely also, I'll say. And everybody seems to have their own definition, their own model of leadership. And the thing is that actually leadership studies is a discipline. And unfortunately, not many of us who practice leadership or who teach leadership, we haven't really gone into the discipline of leadership studies. If you ask yourself the question, when did the concept of leadership studies start? When did we start talking about this term leadership and started to say, let's develop leaders? you'll find that the history of it is not very long. It's actually, possibly less than a 200-year-old history. While leaders have existed for very long, and while leadership has happened for very long, leadership, the act of studying and creating, intentionally creating leadership, that hasn't happened for very long. And those people who do study it, they say one thing that they actually talk about is you have to be aware of the context in which you're talking about it, leadership. And this is something I actually heard from Narayan Murthy as well. I actually got to see him at Pune airport. So I grabbed him and I ate his brain for 30 minutes. And I asked him a lot of questions around leadership. So he told me some very interesting things. But one of the things he opened with, he said, leadership is always about context. And your context of leadership and my context of leadership can be very different. For example, Millin's question is very clear. I'm talking about leadership in a sales context, right? Sagar's is a little different. Sagar is saying, what about manufacturing SME? Leadership in politics, leadership in religion, leadership in the army, leadership in organizations. All of these are different in context. So we've got to understand which context we're talking about, because it may be different for us. We're talking about, my assumption is we're talking about leadership in the organizational context. And as you can sense, that leadership in the organizational context is a little different from, let's say, leadership in politics, leadership in religion, leadership in the armed forces, etc., etc. So within that context, leadership also has many layers. When we actually, when we say that I want my company to play a leadership role in this sector, like Namrata may say, and I'm in the herbals. Am I right? If I assume, Namrata, that you're in the herbal space,
Yes.
what do you call
Yes.
it? What's the right name for the sector?
Herbal medicine.
Herbal medicine? Okay, it's not agro or anything, right?
No.
Okay, great. So herbal medicine. So Namrata may say that, I want my organization to play a leadership role here. She's talking about market leadership, which is very different from, the leadership that we're talking about, possibly. So again, I think the clarity we want is, in which context are we talking about leadership? Are you talking about a human being becoming adept at leading other people, at leading a team? And is that what we want to talk about today?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Right. In the organizational context. Right. Okay, great. So I want to begin with a little exercise, if you will allow me. Dinakar, is it possible to open up a few breakout rooms?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Then I can make you the host. You can,
If you
can,
could, yes, if you could
yeah.
make me the host, I want to do a quick breakout room exercise.
Sure.
And that'll actually be very nice.
Yeah, there you are.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And breakout rooms. Here we go. I'm going to start with 2. And we will have, should we do 3? Just give me a second. Yeah, I think we'll do. All right. So I'm going to open up a few breakout rooms. And here's what I'd like you to talk about in the breakout room. See, in the organization context, it's possible that you must have encountered some leader. You must have come across some leader that you thought was really inspirational, right? I mean, we've all been working for many years, several decades. in the several decades of working, you must have come across some leader that you thought was really good, really inspiring. What I'd like you to do is think about this leader and think about the reasons why they came across as great to you. Why do you think they were so good, so inspiring? And in the breakout room, I'd like you to share that. Saying, you know what, the leader that I'm thinking about would do this, they would do this, they would do this. And that's why I find them so inspirational. So just, 3 people in a breakout room, please have a chat with each other. Share your perspectives about what made that leader so inspirational. And when you come back, I'd love to hear that from you. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Please go on.
You will have 6 minutes in the breakout room.
Okay.
So just be conscious that each person should get their turn to speak.
Yeah, sure.
Which behaviors did you, which behaviors did you hear being talked about that made the leader inspirational?
So I can start. In our group, we spoke about 4 qualities. One is never give up attitude, and being optimistic, and making the subordinate understand what needs to be done, and then giving the space to experiment, to work, not really doing any micromanagement. And finally, in case anything goes wrong, to have his back. It means to support. These were the 5.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Sagar, would you like to speak for our...
Go ahead, Ajit. You can summarize.
Okay. The first thing which was discussed was, the risk-taking abilities of leaders, which was very stimulating. Number 2 is the support systems which are created for the team. The third was those who anchor to the culture and the mission of the main purpose. And yeah, I think these 3 we can take.
Sure. Thank you.
Ellen, would you like to speak from our group?
Yeah. So the 3 important points what we found out was a leader trusting his supporting organization. That is the first important part. Second thing is giving him the free hand, but making them work the way he wants you to make it happen. Okay, so I know it's conflicting, but that's the real leadership thing which the management found out. And the third one was being impartial in the operation, in managing the business. Yeah, Hemant, is it right way to put it?
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
That's what I found. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I know there were 3 rooms, so all 3 rooms seem to be done. So in the points that each group has actually shared, do you notice any common thread, a common trend in this?
One is giving freedom, and then just monitoring the way how their subordinate work. So that's one stuff which we could see.
Yeah, thanks, Karis.
Which is trust, right? Trusting your team. And
another common thread is the difference is, look at the spectrum which we get.
Would you say more about that, Ajit? What, which spectrum are we referring to?
Yeah, see, as you rightly pointed out, if you take Nandan Nilekani, he was such a wonderful leader in Infosys, but when he went to government, what happened? So, the spectrum arises, as you rightly pointed out, contextual, because people change, your perceptions change, and your cognition changes. So there are so many such aspects.
Yeah.
And that's why there is no fixed norm or form.
Yeah.
And the leader has to be very, very, sturdy, resilient, very intentional, otherwise very difficult.
Yeah. Thanks so much. So you're right. One of the common threads that each group identified was that there was a tendency to trust the team, to give a free hand to the team, to back the team. And if I was to ask you that for all the leaders that you thought about and you discussed, if you had to say that this leader's attention was on others, on serving others, or this leader's attention on meeting their own needs, where would you say the leader's focus was? Was it on their needs, or was it on others' needs?
Others' needs, at least in the breakout group that we discussed, it was on the others' needs.
Organizations needs.
So you know what, this is one of the things that that seems to be a key difference between inspirational leadership and let's say everyday leadership. See, leadership is possible for all of us to practice. We all practice it, in the working world. There are many kinds of leaders. But when we ask you to think about who the most inspirational and who the most impactful leaders were for you, the ones that we tend to think of are not people who were about me, but their focus was on serving the needs of others, trying to understand, what does my organization need? What does my team need? How can I help them? How can I support them? And this aspect, funnily, this aspect of leadership, not just in organizations, but actually you can see this aspect of leadership in every other sphere that we discussed. You can take a political leader, you can take a religious leader, you can take a military leader, you can take an organizational leader. The finest ones seem to be the ones whose focus was on serving the needs of others. This is something that even I realized a little late in my career, because when I was a practicing leader, I thought that my job was to be there for my team, was to ensure that my team felt supported, enabled, trained, and that, all of that stuff. But I did not realize at that time, in those early days, that actually my team leaders are not my only stakeholders. I have multiple stakeholders, and my job is not only to serve one set of stakeholders, but I have to serve multiple stakeholders. So my serving I have to serve the needs of my team, but I also have to serve the needs of my customers, and I have to serve the needs of my senior management, and I have to serve the needs of every stakeholder that I interact with. If I can think of myself as a facilitator, as an agent that can help somebody else, that can solve somebody else's problem, then what happens is that I get seen as the kind of leader that you thought about. And actually, there's a couple of people who've written books about this. There's a guy called Robert Greenleaf who wrote a book called Servant Leadership, right? There's Bill George that talks about servant leadership in the books that he's written. In Pune, there used to be a Servant Society of India that was started by Gopal Krishna Gokhale. So if you see, service to your community seems to be an integral part of inspirational leadership. And I found that, when we start seeing leadership less as a designation, less as a title, less as a privilege.
Yeah, please go on, Aman.
Sure. when we start seeing leadership less as a privilege, as a title, as a designation, as a role, and we start seeing it more as an opportunity to or a duty to serve others around us, our kind of leadership changes. That's one aspect that I want to talk about. There's another gentleman called Peter Senge. I'll actually come to Peter Senge in 1 minute. But before that, I want to go back to the leadership studies thing that I spoke about earlier. So a lot of leadership studies were actually not based on studies. They were actually based on a lot of popular stories, old tales, old mythologies, old histories. And the leader was often portrayed as one superhuman, right? One person, one hero who would take charge and who would change the world all by himself or herself. And a lot of initial thinking about leadership was built around this. And we call that the hero model of leadership. Now, the challenge with the hero model of leadership is leadership in today's world, especially in in the organizational context, in today's world is not simple and straightforward. It's very complex. You've got many responsibilities. You don't have to demonstrate 3 traits. You have to demonstrate some 30 traits. So, expecting one human being to actually be this all-winning hero, all-conquering hero, and save the whole organization on his own, this is actually from mythology. It doesn't happen in real life. If you look at an organization, no team runs because of one hero. That one hero has a team. So, go back to Infosys. It wasn't only Narayan Murthy. He may be the most well-known, but it was Murthy plus Nandan plus Mohan Lal plus, Shibu Lal plus, all those other initial people who set it up together.
Chris Gopal Krishnan, Mohandas Pai.
Grace Mohandas Pai, all of those people who built it together. Take any organization. We tend to look at Ratan Tata and JRD, but we forget about guys like Rusi Modi, and we forget about all the people who are actually enabling them. And you forget about Rusi Modi's team also. So this is what this is the other myth about leadership we need to break. That leadership, that hero model of leadership is actually from the realm of myth. And so what Peter Senge talks about is very interesting. Peter Senge's definition of leadership is mind-blowing. For me, it was when I encountered it. Senge didn't say leadership is this quality, that quality. Leadership, according to Peter Senge, is the capacity of a human community to shape its future. He doesn't say the capacity of an individual or a group of individuals. He says the capacity of a community to shape its future. And in that, he changes the whole paradigm of leadership from an individual solo hero, leadership to a shared model of leadership. So, for example, what would the leadership of SIT be like? Look at SIT, and SIT is a community. So what a question that Peter Senge would ask us is, okay, so when we're talking about SIT and leadership, we're saying the capacity of this community to shape its future. Not one man, not 5 people, but the community.
But isn't that dependent on the area which you are working? Army cannot have a leadership as a let the whole troop do the job. It has to be well-directed operation to make it happen. So it just depends upon the kind of organization we are managing or we are running or we are talking about. That's my feeling there. So it's all organization dependent than the individual or a group of individuals or whatever you want to call it as.
Yeah. Yes, Milind, which is what we kind of started out talking with, that, context explains everything. And we're really talking about organizational context. And let's examine this, because Senge's work obviously is in the organizational sphere also. So let's examine this in the organizational context. I'm going back to the question you asked, Milind, and the question you asked, Sagar. That how do I, how can I have inspiring leaders in the manufacturing SME segment, or how can I have inspiring sales leaders? And what I'd like you to toy with is this question, saying, what if the leader, instead of trying to take charge of everything themselves, decided to follow a more shared, collaborative, participative leadership style? Would something change if that happened?
If you ask, I mean, that is my personal experience in my current business.
Sure.
Yes, that is how he started working with. But at the same time, the person forgot that he is responsible for the delivery of what he owns. Okay, you can start in participative, you can start and do something more on it, but at the back of the whole thing, person has to say that, okay, I own the business development, I own the sales. If somebody doesn't work out, I support him, cannot be the solution at that point of time, because some of these things are time driven. You cannot say that, okay, he's failing, let me try, give him another 6 months. I mean, maybe after another 6 months, the organization may not exist itself, right? I'm taking in the startup context, okay, because
Sure.
that's our topic today. So
Sure.
that's why I'm taking that as a context, saying that the timeline is extremely critical in getting a result. And I don't know what is that leadership is called as, but that is what is very critical and important in the startup world, is what I personally feel.
Yes, yeah. I hear you, Milind. And obviously I'm not currently standing in your shoes. I don't know your reality, only you know it well. Often what I've seen, and this is not only in startups, in big organizations also, but often I've seen this in startups, is that the timeline, the goal, the timeline, the deadline is actually not arrived at in a participatory way or in a collaborative way. Often it is decided by the let's call it the founder, owner, whoever, right? So what happens is, when the very goal is not, it doesn't have collaborative buy-in, it becomes a little harder to persuade the rest of the team, saying, okay, you run after this. Or essentially what often happens is people say, you demonstrate ownership for my goal. That's where the gap happens. So, one way of, I know it's hard in the startup world because you're trying to get something done fast. But one way to try out is to actually say, okay, we are a community that's going to build this together. What is the goal we are going to drive towards? What are the deadlines we're going to drive towards? And arrive at it collaboratively. That's when we can actually have people take ownership, for that goal. But if we don't do that, then sometimes what we do is we ask other people to take ownership for my goal. And then that gap, you understand that.
That's what you said is right, actually. The founders typically tend to go in that direction. And that's...
Yeah, and obviously their founders are ambitious, they've got a dream, they've got a goal, but the whole thing about a goal and a dream is you got to take people along, rather than tell them, okay, that's the goal, run. I think that little gap happens.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sagar,
I
you
think,
were saying something.
yeah. No, I think, Aman, since we are only running short of time a little, so I thought we could just get into more kind of deliberate whatever you spoke till now, and then get some takeaway. So I have 4 takeaways which I have noted down. One is the most important thing is understanding the context thoroughly is the foundation for effective leadership. That is the first which we spoke about.
Yeah.
Second is inspirational leadership is about serving and fulfilling the needs and expectations of multiple stakeholders. And the third one we said was developing mutual trust and providing freedom for the team to perform and supporting when needed is the other key characteristic of a great leader or an inspiring leader. And the last one is shaping the future, a shared vision together along with the stakeholders is the primary outcome of leadership is what I noted down. Now, here I want to just comment on what Milind said, and maybe we can also engage in a discussion. I think what he mentioned is very, very true. In my opinion, that basically happens because of two reasons. Number one, when you say servant leadership, when you say collaborative leadership, as a leader, I always look at me leading a team and not me leading the entire ecosystem to provide a outcome. So when you talk about multiple stakeholders, you are quite specific on that. It's not just about me leading the team in a participative way. It's also me trying to understand what is the expectation of the customer, expectation of my shareholder, expectation of my family, and making sure that their expectations also are equally met in a collaborative way.
Yeah.
And when I assume that ownership, that responsibility, then automatically I would make sure that whatever targets I am giving, targets will be extremely tight, but still everybody knows as to why I need to have tight targets. And then the ownership gets built in. So I'm just to conclude, this servant leadership is not about only for the team, but for the entire ecosystem in which the leader is located in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sagar, you had a question. Please go on. Or a comment.
Yeah, look, see, we are talking more about this leadership with context to startups. Now, when it comes, I have this or my opinion is in this way. We had a .com bust that happened decades ago. Likewise, probably are we at that stage where we have this startup bubble burst? Now, if yes, did these startups, which actually that I see as screwed up startups, fail actually in the leadership?
Sorry,
What are your questions, Sagar? It is difficult to understand.
If you could just repeat that question, Sagar.
My question is the startup bubble actually burst? And is that because of the leadership?
Why do I don't know. Okay, but Aman, please go on.
Yeah, Sagar, I'm actually, one of the things that I've always believed, and this is in line with what I was doing earlier when I was quoting Peter Senge. See, one individual can not pretend to be an expert in any area. So I will not pretend to be an expert either in startups or in leadership. I think expertise is also something which is developed by sharing. So I'm only going to share my point of view and then invite everybody else to share their point of view. And I think together we might get a little more clarity. I have maybe 2 or 3 thoughts. I've thought about what you're saying. From far, what I know about the startup world is that earlier when people built a business, they did not always have access to funding. So an organization was actually built brick by brick by brick by brick by brick. And then the idea was not to take a lot of money and burn cash. The idea was to find a way to make cash. So I think that's one of our challenges that that we are facing now. That the other thing is leadership also you learn by being in the field. Leadership by actually having been a leader. Leadership is developed through crucible. There are these crucible moments. You go through the fire, you burn yourself, you fall on your face, and then you learn. Then you try something again, you fall on. So you fall 10 times, and that makes you a smarter leader. Now, in earlier times, by the time you decided to, build your own company, often you'd fallen many times. Today, one of the challenges, a lot of people who are given a lot of money have not been through leadership crucibles. And as a result of that, the kind of leadership they need to demonstrate, they don't have yet. Plus, there is no leadership development. Nobody is even coaching them or developing them. So the VCs aren't telling them, sorry, you're inexperienced, so you must work with a leadership coach. They're telling them you are cat's whiskers. They also think they are cat's whiskers. Plus, they have $1 million or $10 million to burn. And I think a combination of these factors is causing this, rationalization in the startup space. I mean, that's my view.
Yeah, great. Anybody else wants to add to Aman's view on this topic? Because that's very interesting for our startups here. So I feel the reason why the bubble busting or whatever you spoke about, Sagar, has less to do with leadership and has more to do with primary business acumen. See, when you are trying to develop a product, most of the founders are people who would have an idea and they want to do something to meet a particular market need, but they have not really understood that the market need really exists, and the market need may not exist also. Or if the market need is there, the market need is something different. And I could put myself also in the same shoes, where it took me a lot to realize that what I am doing is not what the market needs. And that realization has less to do with leadership, but basically it's primary business acumen, sales acumen. And if you look at the startups who have been started by people with a good sales background, they have had better success either in the product itself or even in raising funds, because there you are looking always from the customer's eyes. And again, going to what Aman said about servant leadership, leadership is all about, from the leadership perspective, it's about meeting their expectations also, because they are the customers. You can't really look at meeting expectations of yours or your teams or your financiers. That's what I felt. And Aman, yeah, please go on. Please go on.
I just wanted to add something that you said, Dinakar. It reminded me of, there's this writer called Seth Godin. Those of you who are in the marketing space probably know about him. Seth Godin, he's written some 1920 bestseller books. And one of the things he says, look, he wrote this book called Tribes. You should, if you're interested in building your startup, you should read Tribes. He says, look, you have to position yourself as the leader of a tribe. So what you said, Dinakar, market acumen or business acumen is about identifying, is there a community that has a need?
Correct.
Even if there's, a small community, it doesn't need to be, 1 million people. Even if it is like 1,000 people who have a certain need, can I fulfill that need?
Correct.
You end up becoming the servant leader for that tribe,
community.
for that
Correct.
community.
Correct.
And that's where you make the money.
Correct.
Right. So that is very insightful. Yeah. I mean, that book is very interesting, and I think, you should look at it.
Yeah. So I just had 2 points which we had spoken about initially.
Yeah.
One was when Namrata was talking about Narayan Murthy saying that, look, you need to be walking the talk. You need to really demonstrate. It's not that you simply expect something. You should also be in the thick of whatever that is happening. And on the other side, some other people who are telling that, no, you should not do anything. You should let the other person do. So I wanted to just give my opinion on that, and maybe you can also add to that, Aman. I feel walking the talk is a primary quality of any leader. Walking the talk is to really make sure that you do what you say. That is something which builds up the integrity, trust, and everything. And what Narayan Murthy was telling was that when he's telling something, that he should have known what he's talking about. And whatever he talks has to be executed. It's not that he's telling something here and doing something different in the back end. And that is where Narayan Murthy says that I have to dirty my hands and do the work. I should know what I'm doing. And the other person, when he says, he's talking about making sure that you delegate your act. Don't keep everything to yourself, but delegate to the team. And these two are equally required. These two don't have any conflict at all. Those two are absolutely complementing each other. One side, walking the talk of Narayan Murthy, to the art of delegation of whoever was the other person who's telling, to say that you need to give it. Otherwise, you can't grow a company at all. That was my take on this question from or comment from Namrata. What is your
No, I
your
agree with you,
observation?
Dinkar. They're not opposite points of view.
Yeah.
I think what Murthy's point of view is very well taken. I think in our field we say that leadership is caught, not taught.
Yeah.
If you're trying to teach somebody's leadership, you're going to fail. These people are going to look at what you do and
Got to
going
be
to
authentic.
copy your behavior. So if you see
Authentic.
bad behavior under
Yeah.
you, it's probably coming from you or your colleagues.
Correct.
So that's what I think Murthy's point is saying, look, you have to be the kind of person. If you are not accountable and you're not, kind, then nobody else under you is going to be kind. I think that's what he means.
Correct. And the other one was we spoke about leadership, and there were quite a few comments which came up, as to what your ideal leader looks like.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to just share one opinion of mine. I believe you can never see leadership alone or management alone. I believe leadership is all about showing the path and inspiring people, and management is about ruthlessly making sure that your activities, whatever you are doing, is very efficient. When you talk about leadership, I believe both are always implied. You can just not be a leader who's only inspiring people, only getting them to do whatever they want to do without really looking at the efficiency of what they're doing. And that is where management comes into picture, which can possibly have control, planning, and all that. I think both should be combined with any person, be it a manager or a leader, is my opinion. What is your take on that, Aman?
I'm inclined to agree. Again, in the context that we are talking about, Dinkar, the term leadership started to be used later. The initial term that used to be used was managers, and everybody was a manager. Even Jack Welch was a manager.
Correct.
Today we've started using a rather fanciful term, and we would like to call them leaders. But in the organizational context, we are managers. We are doing a lot of management.
Yeah.
We can demonstrate leadership in that role. And you have to, right? I mean, because you're if you're a people manager, if you're only let's say individual contributor manager, and your role does not require you to lead or inspire anybody else.
That would never get your team to be proactive, never get your team to own. Nothing will happen. They just will be beaten continuously.
Exactly. In the startup context, for example, right? I mean, I run a one-person consultancy today.
Yeah.
If I want to make grow my company, it's going to become a 5 people, 10 people company. Now I'm not an individual. Now I have to lead those people.
Correct.
So I'm going to have to play manager, and I'm also going to have to play leader.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And anybody else have any other comment? Please do.
Shall I add?
Yes, sir. Please go on, sir.
I remember when the very powerful leader from Ford company was taken to 3M. That is the only year 3M made a loss. Because what leadership worked in Ford company was a big failure in 3M. Okay, that is number one. Number two is, I remember when I was working in Park Davis India Limited, a finance guy in Johnson & Johnson was made the MD. And that was the only year Johnson & Johnson made loss. So, very unfortunately, I have realized that leadership in one place need not click in leadership in another. Need not.
Correct. Context is very important.
Context is very, very important.
Correct.
Am I ready to change my way of approach? Bayer India Limited was asked to, throw out tons and tons of aspirin because aspirin was banned. One unknown person gave an idea and the MD jumped at it. And today aspirin is reused for your heart. So is the MD open, the leader open to every aspect of it? Or am I the boss? Then the problem starts. So can I see the context, whether it is product oriented, whether it is people oriented, whether it is profit oriented? What is the context which is very, very important? That will keep changing. The leader has to be like a weathercock, depending on what is the need, he has to do that.
Yeah. Ajit, thanks so much. Such a valuable thing you said. And I think, if I may just add, the opportunity for startups actually exists in exactly what Ajit is talking about. The risk in startups, because you got young relatively inexperienced leaders there. The realization that, okay, leadership is not about only what I want, but also about the community. The opportunity is that if we can inspire a lot of leaders in the startup space to think the way Ajit just expressed it, then 20 years later, can you imagine the work culture that India would have?
Mm.
That's the real opportunity, I think, where people can say, there is something magical about working in an Indian company.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a dream.
Absolutely. See, if you look at it on the lighter side, getting politics into our discussion today, if you look at it, what Narendra Modi has done initially when he took over, it was very centralized. Everything would be done by himself, and now I think there are a lot of other people who are getting developed. So it cannot happen in one go that you say that now you put a same formula for every situation. I don't think it will work. So let me just share a slide with the learnings or the takeaways that I have written down here, Aman. And if you can please modify it in case you feel something needs to be changed, we can then will be putting it as part of the video. One is understanding the context thoroughly is the foundation of effective leadership. Inspirational leadership is all about serving and fulfilling the needs and expectations of multiple stakeholders after active listening. Developing mutual trust and providing the freedom for the team to perform and supporting when needed is a catalyst for inspirational leadership. Shaping the future, a shared vision, together along with the stakeholders is the primary outcome of leadership. Would you be comfortable with whatever I have summarized as takeaways?
Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great.
It is really very, very nice having you here, Aman. It was a very, very, very interesting discussion we had. And as usual, we have somebody to conclude our session. So today I would call upon Ajit, who is the senior most in our group here, to just conclude this session. Over to you, Ajit, so that we can end our sit chat today.
Yeah. Actually, there is nothing to conclude. All what you have written on, those 4 points is the conclusion. But yes, a lot of stimulation has taken place. Today's discussion and the way Aman put it has stimulated a lot of, shaken the hornet's nest, because leadership is evolving now. Actually, leadership has started evolving in our country just recently. Because it is changing. I remember when I started leadership, my organization 32 years back, IIM came to study whether the need is there or not. Okay. And they took 6 months to find out that there is a huge need. So 3 of them collaborated and started one company. One started in Bangalore, one in Bombay, and another in Hyderabad. They failed. Because, as rightly pointed out, the idea was greed, not meeting the need. So once, if your, those days there was no funding, but the greed spoiled everything.
Yeah.
But if you are approaching the need of the people, the stakeholders, believe me, nobody on earth can stop you. So there are 3 things which came to my mind. Are you working for greed? Are you working for need? Or are you working to feed people? So what is your approach? So,
or are you obsessed by speed?
yeah. We need to respect gestation period. At the same time, in the gestation period, you see today Amazon, boomed because of the speed they displayed. But they did not display speed in everything. But they proved that because of speed, the large supermarkets could not eat it. His leadership was optimum speed, quality in quantity with velocity. Beautiful. Quality in quantity with velocity. If a leader can understand this balance, everything will fall into place.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aman. It was really very inspiring. Very, very, what should I say, thought-provoking discussion. Thank you so much, and see you all next week.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.